In this module, we will create some parts that will be used in a future module. We will also learn to use the shell command and the project geometry command. So let's move the cursor to the upper left portion of the screen. We'll left click on New. The Create New File dialog box will appear. We'll left click on Standard Inventor Part, and we'll left click on Create. Then we'll start by left clicking on the Start 2D Sketch icon. Move the cursor to the front plane, the XY plane. Left click one time. We're going to start with a 2-inch circle centered on the origin. So we'll move our cursor to the circle icon. We'll left click one time. Move our cursor to the center here. Left click once. We'll drag that out. We'll left click on Dimension. And we'll dimension this to 2.0. Then we'll right click. Left click on OK, right click again, finish sketch, and we'll zoom it out a little bit, and we'll left click on extrude, and we'll extrude this to a distance of 2, and then we'll left click on OK. Now we'll drop these little plus signs down next to the origin. These are the default planes that can be used to create a sketch. So we want a sketch that is going to cut this part right in half, and there's probably going to be 2 of them. The XZ plane or the YZ plane will work for this, and so will the XZ plane. The XY plane, not so much. So we're going to move our cursor to the YZ plane in the origin over here in the tree. We're going to right click once. We're going to left click on New Sketch. Then we'll use the Rotate command to rotate it off center just a little bit. Then we'll right click, left click on OK. Then we'll move our cursor to the View tab. Left click on View. Left click on Visual Style. And we'll left click on Wireframe. Now we have an idea of what this looks like with the plane intersecting it. Now we'll use the Project Geometry tool, and you need to left click on the 3D Model tab, then left click on the Sketch tab, and we'll left click on Project Geometry. We'll move our cursor to the edge of the piston. Basically this is the bottom or top, and we'll move it to this other side. And the yellow lines illustrate a projected geometry that we'll have to delete later. Then we'll right click, left click on OK. Now we'll use a line and connect it to the midpoint of these projected geometry lines. I'm going to left click right there and left click right there. I'm going to right click OK. Now we're going to put a circle on the midpoint of that line. So we'll run along here till we see the green dot. There it is. Left click once, drag this out, right click OK, left click on Dimension, and we'll dimension this to 1/2 inch. So we'll enter 0.5. Right click OK. Now we have to delete all the lines we used to create this circle. So we're going to right click, delete, right click, delete, right click, delete. Then we'll right click, finish sketch. We're going to do an extrude, except we're going to do an extrude cut. So we'll left click on cut, and then this time we need to do a 2-directional extrusion. So I'm going to left click on the symmetrical extrusion, and we'll just leave it at 2 inch. That's fine. We'll left click on OK. Now we don't really have an idea of what we're looking at, so we'll left click on the View tab, left click on Visual Style, and we'll left click on Shaded with Edges, and we should have a hole that is cut right in the middle of our part. This is going to be a piston that will run in a piston assembly. And we'll right click, left click on OK. Move our cursor up to the 3D model tab and then to the sketch. And we're going to put a sketch on this surface here, so once it becomes highlighted, we'll right click, left click on New Sketch. Before we put a sketch on there, we'll left click on the 3D model tab. We'll do a shell of this surface. And shell is right here. We'll left click on shell. The shell dialog box comes up. We'll just go with the default thickness. So we'll just left click on that surface and then left click on OK. And we should have the inside of our piston shelled. Now we'll use a sketch. Left click on the sketch tab and we'll create a rectangle and we'll do an extruded cut. So we'll right click, left click on OK. I'm going to rotate this around just a little bit. Then we'll dimension this line off of the center origin there. Just needs to be 1/2 inch. We'll center this line. This also needs to be 1/2 inch. We'll center the sides here. Those can be 0.375. And then this can be 0.375. Then we'll right click, left click on OK. Right click again, finish sketch. Left click on rotate. We'll right click OK. Then we'll left click on extrude. We're going to do a cut. We don't want it to be 2 inch. It'll come out the top, so we want 1.875. We now have a piston that we're going to use for the piston assembly. So we'll right click, left click on OK. We'll save this. And this will be piston 1. And we'll left click on save. Now we've got several other parts that we'll need to construct. Now I'm going to close this. We'll left click on new. We'll click on standard inventor part. In the create new file dialog box, left click on create. I'm going to start 2D sketch. Left click on the XY plane. And the first thing we're going to do is make a wrist pin. Left click on the circle. Just put a circle on the center of the origin there. Then we'll dimension this to 1/2 inch. And we'll right click on OK. Right click, left click on finish sketch. We'll extrude this, and this will need to be 1.875. And we'll left click on OK. We'll save that. And this is going to be wrist pin 1. And we'll close that. And next we'll do the piston case. Start with a new drawing again. Create a new file dialog box, standard inventor part, create. Start 2-dimensional sketch. So we'll start by just left clicking on the line command. And we'll create a sketch that looks similar to what is shown here. And we'll dimension this to 2.75. We'll wheel that out Dimension this to 3. Dimension this to 8. We'll dimension this end to 0.75. Then we'll right click, left click on OK, right click again, finish sketch. We'll zoom it out, pan it down. We'll extrude it to 2.25. Then we'll left click on OK. Next we'll use the fillet command. Clean up the edges here a little bit. So we'll left click on that edge, this edge, and we'll enter 1.125. Left click on OK. Then we'll right click on top, left click on new sketch. We'll pan it up. We'll left click on circle. Move our cursor to the very edge of the part. Once this center radius comes up, we'll float the cursor over there. Left click, right click, OK. Left click on dimension. We'll enter 0.5. Then we'll right click, left click on OK, right click again, finish sketch. We'll extrude a hole. This only needs to be 0.75. Left click on OK. Then we'll use the rotate command to rotate the part up. Right click on OK. We'll move our cursor into this underside here. This is where the cylinder is going to be. We're going to move it over that surface. When it becomes red, we'll right click once, left click on new sketch, left click on circle, and if we float the cursor, there's the midpoint of that line and the midpoint of this line. Right there, the two dashed lines tell me I'm in the middle. We'll stretch this out. We'll right click, OK. Left click on dimension. This is supposed to be 2. And then this should measure out at 1 1/8. So we'll left click on dimension, trying to get the dot without getting the dimension. There we go, 1.125, that's right. And we'll dimension down here, 1.125. Right click, left click on OK. We'll right click again, finish sketch. We'll left click on extrude. We'll move it inside the circle. We'll cut. And remember, this was 2.75. Then we'll hit OK. Then we'll rotate it around, make sure it went clear out the top, and it did. When we import this into the assembly, we want to have it in this position right here. And we'll be able to handle that in the assembly area. I'm going to right click, left click on OK. We'll save this as piston case 1. I'll left click on save. We have 2 parts left to go. I'll left click on close. We don't need the part open. So new, standard inventor part, create, start 2D sketch, XY plane. The first one we're going to do is a connecting rod. We'll just move our cursor down onto this line and drag a circle out that looks similar to this. We'll drag another one off of the origin. Then we'll drag a third circle that's a little bit larger, and a fourth circle. And we'll right click, left click on OK. So the inside circle has to be 0.5 in diameter. So we'll enter 0.5. And this one needs to be 0.5. The outside one needs to be 0.75. Then we need a dimension between the two of 3.5. Then we'll right click, left click on OK. We'll go back and double check this. It needs to be 2.25. We're going to change it to 3.5 once we do some editing in the assembly area. For right now, we need it to be on the short side. Then we'll move our cursor to the line command. We'll left click at the very top of this circle and connect these with a line. Wait for the dots to appear. We'll right click, OK. Left click on line again. And we'll left click, right click, OK. Then we'll use the trim command. Trim out the inside of the circle. Then we'll right click, left click on OK. Right click again, finish sketch. We'll zoom it out. We'll extrude it to 0.25. And we have our connecting rod now. So we'll save that as con rod 1. And then we have one more piece to create, and that is the crankshaft. So left click on no, start with new, standard inventor part, create, start 2D sketch, XY plane. Okay, we'll start with two circles that are a diameter of 1 inch. We'll put the first one right here on the origin. We'll zoom out, pan it down. And we'll put the next circle right here. And then we will make them 1 inch apart. So we'll have 1, 1, and 1. Then we'll move our cursor here, and right on the quadrant there, the east or west, we're going to basically make these lines tangent. Then we'll left click on trim. We'll trim out the inside. We'll right click, left click on OK, right click, finish 2D sketch. We'll scroll it out. We'll hit extrude, 0.25. Left click on OK, and we'll put a 1/4 inch pin up here, 1/2 inch pin, sorry, and then a 1/2 inch pin on the opposite side. So we'll move the cursor to this left side. When it becomes highlighted, we'll right click once. We'll left click on new sketch, and we'll put a circle right here. Left click one time, right click, OK. We'll dimension this to 0.5. We'll right click, left click on OK, right click again, finish sketch. We'll extrude this to 1/4 inch. We'll rotate the part around. Left click, OK. We'll do the exact same thing. Now we're going to put a circle on the top. So left click on circle, and we'll sneak down here, left click, right click, OK, left click on dimension, enter 0.5, right click, OK, right click, finish sketch. We'll extrude that, and we now have our crankshaft. Right click, OK, and then we'll save that as crank shaft 1. And this concludes this module, creating parts that will be used in a future assembly module, and use of the fillet and shell commands.